and maybe they don't. But they are the investigative arm. Now, it gets more complicated because you have the top officials in the Department of Justice and the FBI that are likely involved in the referrals that we're going to make. So with that said, this is why it's so sensitive, why we want to give this directly to the Attorney General and let him decide how to take these referrals. Then at the same time, just because we have information and the executive branch decides to look at that information, all Americans have the right to a fair trial, and that goes to the judicial branch of our government. So I know it's frustrating, but we have three branches of government for a reason, and we have to work within those bounds of the Constitution.
But you are an elected official. One would think an elected official sends over criminal referrals to the Attorney General. The AG will take it seriously and perhaps launch an investigation, criminal investigation.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to ignore. Some of these are very straight up. I mean, if they're busting people, if the Mueller team was busting people for lying to the FBI, I mean, there's some pretty simple times when people lied to Congress, misled Congress, for the sole purpose of obstructing our investigation. And remember, what we were trying to get to the bottom of, that was that the Department of Justice and the FBI and the Clinton campaign were essentially taking information from Russians, the very thing they were looking at the Trump campaign for. So I would be surprised if they don't take this up. Some of these up that are very just cut and dry, very simple, could be prosecuted in a short amount of time.
How many people is this capturing? You've got 8 referrals. Several people lied to Congress. Several people also apparently misled the FISA court. And I want you to explain how they misled the FISA court. But first, tell us, how many people is this capturing? Can you give us any names on this list in terms of your referrals?
Well, I'm not prepared to give any names, but I think most people that have followed Russiagate for a long time, they know a lot of the names. But there's 5 that are straight up, 5 names. Then there are, when you get to the leaks, we don't know. We think there's only a few people behind these leaks, but there could be multiple people. So on the leak, the global leak referral, there could be several individuals. When you look at the conspiracy, I mean, that could get up to a dozen, 2 dozen people. So, for example, we don't know all the people that are involved. Look, we know Strzok and Page, and we know their involvement because they've been interviewed. But, there's other people that were above Strzok and below Strzok that have not been interviewed. So we don't know if they're involved in this conspiracy or not. But, one of the things that has been great is we've had so many whistleblowers, so many people over the last 2.5 years that have come, great Americans who have come and said, look, this isn't right, and you guys have to get to the bottom of it. And it's been an unbelievable investigation that we've undertaken, but I think one that has been quite fruitful, so that we can put the United States on the road to recovery to get over this manufactured hoax.
Yeah, and manufactured is what you might call what John Brennan has been going along with for the last 2 years, calling the president treasonous. Is he on your list? I mean, John Brennan walking around with his CIA title, former director of the CIA, when he speaks, you sit up and listen, and for the last 2 years, he said the president committed treason.
Yeah, well, look, what I would say about all of these former intelligence heads is that this is just not appropriate. I think at some point Congress is going to have to look at these laws and decide, do we really want our former CIA director or DNI director going out publicly, going onto television, getting huge television contracts? I don't know. Maybe we need to look at how this is set up again, because it really puts somebody in a bind if they can be out. Puts Americans in a bind if they can say, I've seen the classified information, and I can tell you there may be a crime there. It's just not right.
All right, Congressman, we're going to take a short break. I want to get your take on specifically how they misled the FISA court, because we've had a number of your colleagues on who push back on that. Also got to get your take on your thoughts on what's going on in terms of the Mueller report being released in its entirety. Plus, later, Democratic Congresswoman Elisa Slotkin is with me with excerpts of my exclusive interview as well with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, all ahead after this short break. Follow me on Twitter, @Maria_Bartiromo, @SundayFutures. Let us know what you'd like to know from Devin, Nunes, and my guest today. On Instagram, @SundayFutures. Back in a minute. This morning, and Congressman, you just broke news on the program that you are sending 8 criminal referrals to the AG next week. 3 of them around conspiracy, lying, leaking. Now, one of them, conspiracy to lie to the FISA court, Congressman. We had on your colleague, Jim Himes, recently, who kept pushing back, saying that there was absolutely no wrongdoing in front of the FISA court. And you say?
Well, I don't really care what they say. I mean, they've lied multiple times to the American people. All you have to do is look at their phony memos. They've had the full support of the media, 90% of the media in this country. They all have egg on their face. And so the fact of the matter remains, is justice going to be served or is justice going to be denied? And that's why we're sending over these criminal referrals. So, there's so much left. Remember, the American people have only seen the pieces that have been declassified so far that we were luckily been able to make classified and let the American people know about how the FISA court was abused. There's still more information. I've said this before. This was their insurance policy. A lot of people think the insurance policy was just the overall investigation of the Trump campaign. It's actually much more conspiratorial than that. That's left behind there. There was exculpatory information. We've talked about it on your show many times. So, look, Maria, if you take what the Democrats have said throughout the last 2.5 years, there's only one thing that you can be certain of, and that is whatever they tell you is wrong or a lie, or they actually mean the opposite.
Should the Mueller report be made public, Congressman?
Well, what I've said about the Mueller, I think I was one of the first members of Congress to actually say that the Mueller report should be made public, but not just the Mueller report. Because remember, many people that are on the team, the Mueller team, are involved in a lot of these conspiracies. Right? So you have the leader on the team, the deputy supposedly, and another top lawyer were both involved in the chain of custody of the Steele dossier, the Democratic Oppo Dirt. It is impossible for me to believe that those 2 lawyers, very smart lawyers, didn't know in the middle of 2016 that information was dirt coming from the Democrats. It's impossible. The other 2, you had 2 FBI agents, Strzok and Page, who were kicked off the Mueller team. So I want the underlying information because I think the indictments that were made by the Mueller team, I think some are very questionable. And I think there's pieces of them that always read like Russian spy novels. That was done on purpose to create a narrative to make the American people think, as they were indicting these people, that somehow this had to do with collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And so what do I want about the Mueller report? I don't care what's in the Mueller report. As a matter of fact, I call it the Mueller dossier.
Yeah.
What I want is the information underlying the report so that we can actually look into it, because every time we peel back the onion in this case, what do we find? We find out that somehow high-level officials within the DOJ and FBI were misleading the American people and the courts.
Yeah. Well, we're going to keep watching that. We want to find out how far up the chain it goes in the Obama Department of Justice and the Obama administration. Congressman, we'll keep fighting and looking for it. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.